The empath's silent withdrawal is the most potent form of revenge. And Carl Jung knew exactly why it crushes those who have exploited their generosity. It's not about yelling, confronting, or staging dramatic scenes. It's something far more powerful. Total retreat. When someone who has given everything simply vanishes into quiet, Jung observed that it forces others to face a truth they've long ignored. They never truly loved you. They were merely using you. Imagine this scene. Years spent being the emotional anchor for everyone around you. The one who listens without judgment, who soothes without complaint, who gives without expecting anything back. You've absorbed their anger, their pain, their dysfunction until your own spirit feels estranged. But then something changes, not through anger or spectacle, but through calm certainty. You stop explaining yourself. You stop apologizing for having your own needs. Most devastating of all, you stop being available for their emotional crises. Jung called this shift the withdrawal of projections. He understood why it feels like psychological warfare to those who thrived on your unending generosity. But here's what Jung uncovered that reframes our understanding of highly sensitive people, what we now call empaths. He described them as individuals with innate sensitiveness, a heightened capacity for psychological perception that makes them natural vessels for other people's unconscious material. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." For the highly sensitive, this unconscious influence comes from others' emotions rather than their own internal guidance. They take on others' irritation as a responsibility to heal instead of cultivating awareness of their own psychological patterns. Jung repeatedly observed this in his clinical work. Sensitive individuals become what he terms psychological containers, unconsciously carrying emotional content that others cannot face. They develop what Jung called a porous ego boundary, making them exceptional at sensing others' feelings, yet poor at differentiating them from their own. This leads to what Jung identified as the helper's dilemma. The more you enable others to avoid their psychological work, the more dependent they become on your emotional labor. You are no longer a person to them, but a function. Jung noted that these dynamics operate on an unconscious contract of codependence. The sensitive person bears the emotional load while others offer conditional acceptance in return. Neither side is fully aware of this, which gives the arrangement its hidden power. Jung wrote, "We cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses." In such relationships, only the sensitive one transforms. They adapt, accommodate, and absorb, while others remain unchanged. This is why Jung emphasized that true individuation, becoming authentically yourself, requires what he called the courage to be displeasing. For highly sensitive people, this courage can feel like betrayal because their identity has been built around being helpful, understanding, and emotionally present. Jung identified specific psychological stages that emerge when sensitive individuals reclaim their autonomy. What I call the 5 stages of empathic individuation. Understanding these stages clarifies why the quiet withdrawal is so devastatingly effective. The first stage Jung noted is the moment of psychological clarity. Usually subtle, it's often triggered by a small incident that suddenly exposes the full dynamic. You realize your presence has been treated as a function rather than appreciated as a person. Jung wrote, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you." This awakening is often painful for sensitive people because it exposes how much they've sacrificed for others' comfort. You begin to see your kindness as misread as weakness, your empathy as mere availability, your silence as consent. Most shocking is the realization that many in your life don't actually know who you are beneath the role of emotional support. Jung considered this recognition the first step toward psychological independence. The moment you stop excusing others' behavior and start questioning why so little has been returned for so much given. Comment if you've experienced that sudden clarity about a relationship. This recognition phase often involves what Jung called shadow integration, acknowledging your role in your own exploitation by not setting proper boundaries. It's not self-blame, but awareness that empowers real change. Jung observed that once this recognition occurs, sensitive individuals enter what I call the great reorientation. Their energy begins to flow inward rather than outward. This isn't depression or simple withdrawal. It's a conscious redirection of psychological resources. You stop automatically saying yes to every request. You pause before taking on others' emotional states. Most importantly, You begin asking questions you've never considered before. What do I truly want? What do I need? Who am I when I'm not constantly caring for everyone else? Jung wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." For highly sensitive people, this stage often feels selfish because they've been conditioned to tie their value to how useful they are to others. During this phase, you may encounter what Jung called the discomfort of authenticity. Being yourself feels strange after years of being whatever others required. You start setting small boundaries, saying no to minor requests, and taking personal time without needing to justify it. But here's what Jung understood. Every boundary you establish is not only personal but also healing for others. By refusing to enable their emotional avoidance, you compel them to develop their own coping strategies. This is where Jung's insight clarifies why the quiet exit is so psychologically potent. He noticed that when sensitive individuals stop overfunctioning in relationships, it produces what I call the vacuum effect. The space you once filled with emotional labor becomes painfully visible. You stop initiating conversations. You no longer rush to resolve conflicts. You become unavailable for the daily emotional maintenance you once provided automatically. Most importantly, you stop explaining your choices or seeking approval for them. Jung called this the withdrawal of participation mystique, no longer unconsciously merging with others' psychological states. Instead of absorbing their emotions, you start observing them. Instead of fixing their problems, you begin witnessing their decisions. The psychological impact on others is immediate and profound. They suddenly realize how much they relied on your emotional regulation, your avoidance of conflict, and your endless accommodation. What once felt natural to them was actually maintained by your invisible labor. If you've ever gone completely silent with someone who took you for granted, comment, "My silence spoke louder than my words ever did." Jung understood that this silence is not punishment, it's protection. You're not trying to hurt others. You're trying to stop harming yourself. Yet for those accustomed to your availability, your absence feels like abandonment, because they've never learned to meet their own emotional needs. Jung observed that when sensitive individuals withdraw their support, it forces others into what he called psychological accountability. They must confront that their relationship was built on exploitation rather than authentic connection. This is where the power of the quiet exit becomes clear. Without your emotional cushioning, others face the full consequences of their actions. Taking without giving, demanding without appreciating, using without valuing. Some respond with anger, calling you cold, selfish, or changed. Jung would interpret this as projection. They see in you the selfishness they refuse to recognize in themselves. Others may attempt what I call hoovering, suddenly showering you with attention, promises, or gestures they never made before. Jung warned that such behavior is manipulation. Where love exists, there is no will to power. Where the will to power dominates, love is absent. True psychological maturity is shown when others take responsibility for themselves and begin doing their own emotional work. This is rare, as it requires confronting uncomfortable truths about oneself. Jung wrote, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of others." Your quiet exit irritates them because it reflects their own capacity for withdrawal and self-protection, qualities they've projected onto you as flaws while relying on your opposite traits. The final stage Jung identified is what I call the birth of psychological sovereignty. You've not only stepped away from unhealthy patterns, but have started creating a life rooted in your authentic self rather than others' expectations. You develop what Jung called conscious empathy, the ability to connect with others' emotions without losing yourself in them. You can show compassion without compulsively trying to fix everything. You can remain sensitive without becoming a vessel for others' unconscious material. Most importantly, you learn to trust your own psychological instincts. Jung wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that matter to oneself." You no longer require external validation to discern what is true, healthy, or serves your highest good. This sovereignty is what makes the quiet exit so devastatingly effective. You're not battling others, you're defending yourself. You're not punishing them, you're preserving your own psychological integrity. If you've reached the point of choosing peace over people-pleasing, comment, "I chose myself for the first time." Yet Jung also cautioned that this stage can bring loneliness. When you stop drawing in people who need fixing, You may feel isolated until you attract those who value authenticity over utility. Jung observed that the empath's quiet exit produces what I call the mirror effect. Your absence forces others to see themselves more clearly, often for the first time. Without your emotional cushioning, they confront the full weight of their own psychological patterns. Some will never understand and may invent narratives about how you changed or became selfish because acknowledging their role is too threatening. Others may experience what Jung called a neurotic breakdown. The collapse of their old coping strategies compels them to develop healthier ones. Though it rarely feels like a gift in the moment, this can be transformative. A rare few use the experience, as Jung intended, for true individuation. They recognize that their reliance on your emotional labor has stunted their own growth. Jung noted that these mirror moments often spark genuine transformation. When someone realizes they've been psychologically parasitic, it can motivate real change. Not to win you back, but to become a complete person themselves. Jung discovered a profound reason why the quiet exit is so psychologically devastating. It's not merely the loss of emotional support. It's the confrontation with what he called the unlived life. By stopping the enabling of others' emotional avoidance, you compel them to face the feelings, conflicts, and growth they've been evading. Your presence wasn't merely comforting, it was inhibiting their psychological development. Jung wrote, "No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." Your quiet exit forces others to finally cultivate their own roots rather than leaning on yours. This is why the revenge feels so intensely brutal. It's not about what you're doing to them. It's about what you've stopped protecting them from. You've taken away the anesthesia, and now they're finally forced to feel everything they've been avoiding. Jung's vision of psychological wholeness included what I call the sovereign sensitive, someone who preserves their deep capacity for empathy without losing themselves in others' experiences. You learn to love without erasing yourself, to help without draining your energy, to care without carrying the weight of other people's responsibilities. You become what Jung described as a conscious individual. Someone who responds with awareness instead of reacting from unconscious conditioning. The quiet exit isn't about becoming cold or distant. It's about becoming conscious. Jung believed that consciousness was humanity's highest achievement, the ability to act from one's authentic self rather than from inherited patterns. When protected by healthy boundaries and guided by deliberate choice, your sensitivity transforms from a vulnerability into a superpower. Jung also believed that highly sensitive individuals play a vital role in humanity's evolution of consciousness, what I call the empathic awakening. When sensitive people stop enabling unconscious behavior and begin modeling conscious living, they elevate collective awareness. Every time you choose authenticity over approval, you give others silent permission to do the same. Every time you establish a boundary, you demonstrate that self-respect is possible. Every time you refuse to carry someone else's emotional weight, you push them to develop their own emotional strength. Jung wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle not to be overwhelmed by the tribe." Your quiet exit is this struggle in action, the assertion of individual consciousness against the pull of collective unconsciousness. And here's what Jung would want you to understand. Your sensitivity is not your weakness. It becomes your greatest strength when consciously directed. The quiet exit is not about revenge or punishment. It's about self-preservation, giving yourself space to become who you truly are. The right people will honor your boundaries, value your depth, and meet you with genuine reciprocity. Those who cannot will reveal themselves through how they react to your newfound sovereignty. Jung's process of individuation isn't comfortable, but it is essential. You cannot become whole while fragments of yourself remain scattered among people who never valued what they received. The empath's quiet exit feels like the most brutal revenge because, in truth, it isn't revenge, it's revelation. When someone who once gave everything disappears into silence, it forces others to face the reality Jung devoted his life to unveiling. Genuine connection requires mutual consciousness, not unconscious exploitation. Your withdrawal is not cruelty, it's clarity. Your silence is not punishment, it's protection. Your boundaries are not walls, they're the groundwork for real connection. Jung wrote, "The first half of life is devoted to forming a healthy ego. The second half is going inward and letting go of it." Your quiet exit clears the path for those authentic connections to appear. If you want to go deeper into how sensitive individuals can navigate a world that often misunderstands their nature, check out my video on 8 signs you're not meant for this world. where I explore Jung's insights into those who experience reality differently from the majority. Your sensitivity was never meant to serve the unconscious, it was meant to guide you, and then inspire those ready to awaken beside you. Thanks for walking this path of understanding with me. See you in the next dimension of consciousness.